Hello everyone, for today's videos we're going to keep the power rankings coming, this time with North America. Now if you haven't seen the previous ones, the general idea is we've got our top 16 teams in North America, and I'm going to take all of those, look at their rosters, rank them from the worst all the way up to the best. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the group fixtures, but not too much. But hopefully the idea that if I tell you who I think the best to the worst team is, you can sort of figure out who I think will get out of groups as well. The big caveat to add to this, of course, is that same as stage one, there's going to be a patch after the first week of groups, before the second week of groups. And obviously this patch could pretty significantly change those power rankings. So what we're going to try and do is not think too much about the specifics of right now and how strong they are, but just general thoughts on the roster, what their power level is, how we think they'll be adapting to a new patch, or how they have adapted to this current patch, and maybe try and extrapolate some of that forward for how they might adapt to future patches or how good they are at this problem solving. So, without too much further ado, we'll go on to our favourite bit of the video. We look at a spreadsheet. Now, if you've not seen the spreadsheet before, you've got all the teams on the left, and these are currently in the order they finished in Swiss, so 1st to 16th based on Swiss finish. And then we've got all the tanks in green and black, we've got all the DPS in pink and yellow, and then in blue and white, all the supports. You get the idea, you probably figured it out right now. You all seem like a group of very smart people. Now, the traditional way I think to start these power rankings is to start at the bottom and work our way up to the top. Now, at this point, it's fair that I'm actually pretty transparent with you and honest that compared to the EMEA region, my depth of knowledge of the North American scene is a little bit slimmer. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make assumptions. And you might be saying things like, wait, assumptions? You mean the things that make an arse out of you and me? And that is true. That's true. But in this particular case, I'm only going to make good assumptions. Now, definitely correct. Will be backed up by future events. So don't worry about it. So initially we have to figure out who goes bottom, right? Who is going to go bottom? And there's a few of these teams that really sit in the category that I've kind of maybe not really heard of before or don't know too many of their players. And these are obviously the ones I'm going to lean towards putting towards the bottom and then maybe trust the Swiss ranking a little bit. I am actually going to take a little bit of a leap away from that though, because when I look at one particular team here, I look at Nightmare Rotation and they've got like a tank player called Dirt. Then they've got a DPS player called Heavenly, Bastion main. They've got a DPS player just called Kai, but he's not written Kai like all the other Kais, like our good friend Team UK Kai and our good friend Kazakhstanian Kai 41. He's written it just KY, so immediately that's got my backup. Likewise, when I get to their support line, I then have to look, and they have one player called Cortal with a 0 in all capitals who seems to be taking himself very seriously as a gamer. But then, also on support, is Salami Boy 200. So this just feels like an immediate clash, right? You can't tell me that Salami Boy 200 is taking it as seriously as Cortal with a 0 is. So because of that, because of the Kai spelled the wrong way, I just can't buy into this roster at all. Loads of red flags for me, and I'm putting him in 16th place. Then we're going to actually go back to our traditional system of trusting the Swiss, and a team that was originally called Team Dust in the Swiss, but they're now called Who is Goldfish. I don't know who is Goldfish. Maybe the particular highlight is they actually literally have Shaq. So if at any point there's some sort of tiebreaker or map 7 is actually just like a basketball game, they've got a huge advantage. But their ability to get to that sort of map 7 basketball game, really unlikely. So I'm gonna keep them where they finished in the Swiss and relatively lowly off this one. Then we sort of have to jump about a little bit. Some of these, because we've got like teams like O3 Splash and Students of the Game that have players I'm a bit more familiar with, so I'm really encouraged to pump them up a little bit higher. Similarly with Citrus Nation, same with Shikigami. Obviously they did quite well in stage 1 previously, so I'm sort of convinced to pump them up a little bit higher. And then actually the team I want to drop in here is Visored. Now again, not a lot of players I'm familiar with, so I'm gonna sort of trust just for clout judgment, I guess, is essentially what I'm doing here. Right? It's a clout judgment of I don't recognize the name, so they can't be good. They have a guy called Massive Poop who is registered as a flex player for them. Zoolander on support. Two Fish. Not names that stand out to me, unfortunately, or names that convince me that these guys are going top 8. So I don't expect we'll see too much of them. Then we're going to go with Daybreak, who did obviously get into... Where have they gone? Here they are. I'm going to go with Daybreak as well. A couple of players are a bit more familiar with. They have a support player called Baller Steve as well. general rule of thumb is if someone calls themselves a baller, they're probably not a baller, right? You don't normally have to like self-proclaim baller status to be a baller. So there's a little bit of a red flag here, but I do recognise a few more of their players. So I think they'll do okay, even if they maybe don't get really near that top 8 situation. Now, we're going to have to resort back to sort of name judgment here, because even though they actually finished quite highly here, the Dill Ducks, again, I look at their roster, and it's just something that makes me deeply uncomfortable. You know, they've got players called Bagel, very reasonable. They've got a player called Crime, but then there's also a player called Frothy Philly 7. Just makes me uncomfortable. Makes me anxious about this team. Their tank player is also called Baz. The only other Baz that comes to mind when I think of Baz is Baz from the Happy Mondays. I don't know how many people in the audience will actually get the Happy Mondays reference, but for those who do, they'll understand why this makes me anxious about the roster. So, Dilly Ducks, I'm actually going to have to put a lot lower than the Swiss system would suggest. Then the other big dropper here is Vice. And maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I didn't see any of the games, so maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. But it's also wild they finished this high, right? They finished 4th in North America, and unfortunately I've not heard of any of the players. So I'm excited to be surprised, right? Of course. There's maybe some bias here, because when D'Impero did a similar thing in EMEA, I was quite happy to see the new names and give them the benefit of the doubt. But obviously these guys are Americans, so no benefit of the doubt will be given. I think they're going to drop down quite hard. Obviously what they've done is create a pretty open Group D that has students of the game and Fuck My Chunker's Life in it. So they're still in a really tough group, even though they got that, in theory, that better seeding from it. Now we're going to go to sort of a bit more of an established team. They did well in stage 1. They got to top 8, spoke to the Flex Support Graveyard, and got a lot of time from this team. I think especially Dan Twist. Dan Twist was the big standout player on this team. I think he played really well, and I don't know how long he's been playing or how old he is, but on the basis that I don't know him, I'm going to say hot new prospect next up. But yeah, a lot of time for Shikigami. I think they're still going to struggle. Ultimately, there are teams with more established quality and talent above them, but I've got a lot of time for Shikigami, and I hope they continue to do well, and I'm excited to watch Dan Twist play again. So lots of good there. Then I'm going to go 0-3 Splash. Honestly, maybe I even change it now, actually. Yeah, I'm putting Shikigami above them. I'm believing in Dan Twist. And I'm actually going to put 0-3 Splash slightly lower down than I originally had planned. I mean, obviously, that Kalman 711 and Haven, players people might be more familiar with. Paintbrush as well, of course. Overwatch League vet, even though I don't expect him to really maybe start too many of these games. Landon was very big on Haven for a long time, so I expect him to be good at hit scan. Kalman has been around and is an established player, but I don't know. They finished quite low in Swiss. Not super convinced by this 0-3 Splash roster, and I want to give Shikigami the benefit of the doubt. Now, we enter what is essentially not the top 8 in terms of who's going to get out of groups, because obviously the groups stack up slightly differently, but the top 8 in terms of who I think the best 8 teams in the region are right now. And this is obviously where, at this point, it's fair to say, I probably become a little bit more informed. Obviously, I probably have a significant bias in terms of most of the games I watch will be actually between some of these higher teams. Like when I watch the scrims, it's normally Toronto Defiant versus a Timeless or an M80 or occasionally a Luminosity. So there's probably definitely still a bias towards the higher place teams. But I think where I want to start with this one, and this is maybe going to upset a lot of people, is I've lost faith in students of the game. I am no longer soggy. I think I've actually dried up. I've dried up, honestly. And I think students of the game, I'm going to put them quite low here. I think, even though on paper their roster's good, I think Scissor's a good Tracer player. I'm actually a big fan of Infected on tank. Have I spelled his name wrong again? I think I might have spelled his name wrong again. It's happened in a previous video, and maybe I've just done it wrong again. We'll figure it out in post. By which I mean, we're just going to leave this bit in, and it is what it is. Sorry, Infected, if I've spelled it wrong again. But overall, a lot of the players are solid, right? I think Cow's a good flex support. Rack is a good main support. Infected, however you spell his name, is a good tank player. We've had Mirror lending a hand coaching as well. And I think this team, on paper, feels like it should be pretty decent, but I feel like I worry. And if you saw EMEA, I talked a little bit about this concept with Ataraxia, and that it just doesn't work. It's going to, like, the longer it goes on, the worse it gets rather than the better it gets. So I don't know if there'll be too many confrontations, if they'll be able to resolve that, or exactly how it will fall out. But I worry we might start to see the fall of students of the game as we get to this stage 2. Hopefully they can prove me wrong, keep playing well, but remains to be seen. Then, one team who I think is actually on a massive up, a team who nearly upset our boy Seeker again in the Swiss stage, is Citrus Nation. This time, Seeker was able to overcome the Citrus Nation first time of asking. But I think when I look at this team, I think especially I want to draw attention to Zeb and Tap, who have been on the team for a while and performing very well for them. Their big addition is obviously Lethal from Left, Right, Good Night. I think Lethal, especially on hit scan, when you're not doing something stupid, like trying to make him into a hyperflex or a tracer player like those idiots on London did, Lethal's a really talented hit scan player. And I think he has decent flexibility, even if it's not always as strong as his hit scan. But his hit scan, I think, is actually really top tier. I think Taps look pretty good on tracer. And all of a sudden, this DPS duo becomes pretty effective. And I think Zeb is super impressive. Every tank I've seen him on, he's looked really good. So excited to see more Zeb. And I think Citrus Nation maybe actually could be one of the teams to punch up a little bit here. Unfortunately for them, they are in a group with Timeless and Luminosity, which means even though I think they might be a top 8 team in terms of pure quality, I don't know if they're actually going to get to the top 8. So problems there for them, obviously. But we'll see how it works out for them. Hopefully they can take a few more scalps. As we enter the top 6, we're going to go Pirates in Pajamas. Pirates in Pajamas are a very weird team because on paper, I don't know if I'd really put them maybe even above a lot of these other teams, sort of pound for pound. But as we saw in stage 1, they just play well. They take teams to map 5. They're not always good for the map 5, but they get teams there. And I think especially if you're a believer in that this new patch is going to make it a ball meta, then if I look at all these balls, I hear it, but we're going to move past it. If I look at all these balls in North America, Strider I think is the best. Is it even that close? I don't know. I mean, I've not... There's no way to say this. I've not seen... I'll say Hammond. I've not seen everyone's Hammond, but I know Strider has a good one, and on the basis that I've not seen much from the others in terms of their Hammond, I have to feel that actually, if it is a ball meta, or a ball becomes a viable part of a lot of teams' compositions, Pirates in Pajamas might actually even shoot up massively. We might be talking like a 4th place finish or something, which for coming into this, I think a lot of people wouldn't have put Pirates in Pajamas that high. So especially if ball becomes legitimately viable, I think Pirates in Pajamas can shoot up even higher than this. But for now, the team I'm going to put above them is Fuck My Chungus Life, or what are they officially called? For My Cherished Lover. For My Cherished Lover. And actually, I really like this team. I'm a huge Wimone fan. I'm a huge Seeker fan. I think these two players are actually, pound for pound in the region, they're really up there. Like, obviously, you got us to talk about players like Merit and Pelican, right? And these players are truly world-class. But I think Wimone and Seeker is actually about as good as a DPS combo you can get without importing. I know Wimone's imported, but without importing a Korean. And I think Ariel's got pretty good flexibility, which seems like a good thing for a tank to have in this type of meta. So I've got lots of reasons to feel hopeful. The support line probably falls into the category I feel about a lot of these North American support lines where I go, it's okay. It's okay. It's not going to be the strength of this roster, and maybe especially when we get to like the RuPaul and Vega level of competition, they're going to run into problems and there won't be that same level of quality there. But a lot of time for them. Big fan of Wimone, big fan of Seeker. Can they perform as well? And to be fair, I've left out Zera here, but I think Zera's Tracer is also really good. I think this opens up the DPS trio. Couldn't ask for much more without obviously starting a Pelican or something, right? So a lot of time for FMCL. I just think a lot of the rosters above them are a bit more, are just equally stacked with talent, honestly. So I think this is the sort of team. Now, I could see maybe they don't make top 3 or maybe even top 4 in this event, but I could see them going up in this ranking over time, maybe overtaking a Luminosity or even an M80 if it doesn't work out for them. Maybe that sort of gives away a little bit of my next ranking, which is going to be Luminosity sitting in this 4th place team. I think Luminosity are a team that have looked quite good. They took a map off of Toronto in the Swiss stage, and obviously a scrim we watched very recently at time of recording actually saw them go 3-3 with Toronto. Even though Toronto were being a little bit experimental with some of the comps, I think it's still a good sign overall for Luminosity. I think Dante is still a top tank player, especially when his hero is not good for him. I think one of the most impressive things from that scrim was how well Luke Mino and Squid played in some of these double flex situations. So I think there's a lot of chance for this roster, honestly. I think King's been playing particularly well. I think Vision definitely has his moments as well. So there's a chance for Luminosity to go up here. It is possible that if it swings away to maybe more of maybe a bull meta or something, looks a little bit ugly for them. But I have a lot of faith in Luminosity. I think they still have a chance to go up. And as much as they finished maybe where they'd expected to in stage 1, I would expect them to do a little bit better here and be a bit more competitive. The main problem Luminosity have, I think, is actually the 3 teams above them are really good. I think, we can maybe do this slightly out of order because I'll spoil the surprise for you. Toronto are taking the number 1 spot, okay? Toronto are the best team in North America. They always have been, and they might always will be as well, in all honesty. But I think what we're starting to get is one is maybe Toronto, then a tier break. And this tier here between sort of Timeless, M80 and Luminosity, I think actually the gap's starting to maybe get a little bit bigger for Timeless above the others. I feel like as much as we like, I like to throw some shade towards Timeless on Uncoachable. I think especially when you look at like the core part, like the Rocket, Chopper, CJ path in this roster is actually super good. I think Rocket and Chopper, and even Seonjin as well, even though it's a bit messy in terms of how they have to divvy up the play time. It doesn't always actually make the most sense. I think individually they're all 3 really good DPS players. I think Riker's really good. So I think there's so many good parts of this roster, and I think they've been playing together a long time. And obviously, if you've seen Uncoachable, T for Timeless. A lot of time for this team. I think they are good. I think the DPS really push this over the top, and I feel like if anyone is going to take maps or ruin Toronto's day, I think it is them, in all honesty. I think M80, who, through process of elimination, do sit into his 3rd spot this time around. I think the Pelican Happy buff is going to be insane. I think anyone who's been watching these M80 scrims has seen Pelican do outrageous things on 160, 180 odd ping. So you get that guy onto Toronto level ping, you get Happy onto that ping, they're going to do super well. I think Hawk is obviously a good tank. He can play a lot of heroes. There's still an element of trying to find the best way through the meta to get him onto it. The biggest worry I have for M80 in a lot of these situations, and this is what I feel when I watch them scrim, is it doesn't feel like they have great solutions for a lot of specific situations, specific maps. I think a lot of the time it takes them a few pushes to work out how they want to take it or something, and maybe this means it's the sort of thing that will get better over time, will improve over time, but right now it doesn't feel like their level of understanding and their sort of solution for these map specifics is close to Timeless or close to Toronto Defiant. And I think this is the sort of thing that will hurt them. And what can happen, especially when the patch changes, is you might have a bit of an understanding here if you're a new team, but then a patch comes and it sort of messes everything up, especially if you're playing different archetypes, right? If you're playing like more dive comps instead of brawl comps or whatever it is. Whereas if you're a more established team like a Timeless or even Toronto, who have been together and trying a lot of comps actively now, is what you have is if there's a big patch change and it goes to something else, you can actually sort of call back to a meta a few patches ago and went, remember we used to do that, or we used to hold like this, or we used to hold in this map like this, we could do the same hold here type thing. All that sort of archival knowledge you have from being a team for a long period of time, I think can make you a lot more robust to new patches or new metas. Maybe if there's a bull meta, then nobody's got too much in their archive for that one. But in general, I think Timeless and Toronto feel a lot more bulletproof to the new patch. I think M80 are going to rely heavily on Pelican and Happy to just do heavy lifting type stuff. And I think, honestly, they will heavy lift them above most of the competition, but I don't think Pelican and Happy can do the heavy lifting above these top 2 spots. If we start to get to a stage where M80 starts to look to have like, I don't know what you'd call it, the same sort of like map specific and more point specific souls and more advanced gameplay in that side of things, I think M80 can really shoot up this ranking. And suddenly, if they can get that going, I think they jump above Timeless and they start to really challenge M80. I think Pelican and Happy are that good. There's a reason these guys were on Houston Outlaws and Houston Outlaws did so well. I think Pelican especially really just looks like the main man. In a way that even like someone does at times, Merit does at times, but I think actually Pelican looks like the biggest carry on any team in North America right now. And once you get him on low ping, he can do even more. They can really put all their eggs into that basket, and it's a you know, that's normally used as a negative, but if the basket's really good, you actually want to put all your eggs into that basket. If you've got the best basket in the region, put all the eggs in said basket. That's what you would do in real life, right? You don't take a different basket for each egg. If you've got a good basket, put all your eggs in that one and you'll be okay. So, saying all that, I am like a big fan. And I think, to be fair as well, one thing that's looked quite good is Liar's I was worried Liar would be a bit of a red flag on this roster, but I thought from the scrims we've seen, he's actually played quite reasonably. So actually in this back line, obviously UV is still good, Hawk is still good. So there's lots of good parts of this M80 roster, but I've not seen enough in terms of actual in-server performance to put him above Timeless right now. Have to put Timeless in that second slot. I still think that in reality, Toronto sweeps a lot of these teams, and there's a pretty big gap. We did see them falter a little bit in stage one, which shouldn't be forgotten. That Toronto did have some rocky matches in that main event, but in theory, I think especially when even though some of the scrims are close, you have to factor in Toronto are experimenting a lot. And once it comes to match day, once it comes to what comps we're really going to play in these matches against these particular teams, they're going to favour the comps that are best for them, and they think are best for that map. And then I think we'll see Toronto actually like jump up a bit of a power level and presumably go back to back and secure that automatic qualification to the major in Dallas. So those are my power rankings. Let me just give it a once over to check I'm actually happy with what I've said. Do I want to shift any of these? I feel like, I don't know, there is a world as well. I think like the teams most likely to move up are Fuck My Chungus Life, Pirates in Pajamas, if there's a ball meta especially, could really move up. Citrus Nation, I think, could cause some upsets, maybe. The problem is they're in Luminosity and Timeless as groups, so they probably just don't make top 8 just by the nature of their group. Students of the Game actually will make top 8 most likely because they've got FMCL, Nightmare Rotation, and Vice in their group. So chances are Students of the Game actually do get into top 8 almost regardless. So I don't know, but I worry. I don't think Students of the Game are upsetting anyone though. I think Students of the Game are going to they'll get to top 8 probably, and then that'll just be it. I don't think we'll see them win too many games in top 8. These teams though, like for Citrus Nation, Pajamas, and Fuck My Chungus Life, I think all have the potential to go up. And if anyone falls down, it's probably Luminosity falling down, if I had to say. There is something about M80 where I just always worry. There's just something sometimes when you watch a team, you're just like, this team could beef it from this situation. They're really good, but they might just beef it. I feel like there's like a beefy nature to M80. Maybe that'll disappear, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, but it's just, I always worry when I watch M80 play. Now, if someone's going to get upset out of these sort of like big three, it's not going to be Toronto. It's probably not going to be Timeless. It's M80 who cop like the ugly loss or something to a team they really would expect to beat or something. So I don't know. I still think there's obviously lots of good things, and M80 off ping, that should in theory be the door being unlocked to a new level of play. But I still think there's some sort of problems with M80 that is not ping related essentially, right? If you've not got good solutions for certain parts of the map, or you look a little bit inexperienced or unknown on some of them. Now, obviously, it's scrims, so maybe they are solving them and I'm overplaying it, but those things are not ping related, and I'd really be interested to see what that looks like for M80 once we get to, maybe not so much group stage, but especially once we get to the main event of the big matches. I think that'll be a big component for them. In all honesty, M80 should just get through groups on the quality of player they have alone. So those are my power rankings. Let me know what you have for your power rankings. Obviously, there's going to be the big patch change in the middle. I know some people will certainly disagree. I imagine some of the players on the team might disagree. But this is how I feel right now. Obviously, we don't know what the meta will look like post this next patch. But if you have your own power rankings you want to submit, drop them in the comments. Any thoughts if you agree with mine or particularly disagree with any of mine? Have I put Timeless too high? Have I exaggerated the gap between Toronto and other teams? Is M80 too low? Is Fuck My Chungus Life too low? Is Seeker really going to finish 5th? Can he punch up? Can he pull him up? Are Pip just going to win it all because they've got Strider on ball? I don't know. But what I do know is that I will actually be streaming all of these things at that link there to my Twitch. We'll be co-streaming all of these group stages. We'll get to see it all play out. We'll get to see the new patch play out in front of all of us as well. So drop us a follow there. Subscribe if you want to support. And we'll catch all the action. All the VODs will be in my second YouTube channel as well, which is in the description down below if you want to catch that. So don't worry, you won't miss anything. All the coverage will be there. We'll see how this plays out. And maybe in the future, what I'll do as well, I'll do a little bit of a after the tournament. We'll go look and see how close my power rankings were to reality and if I'm a fraud or not. We'll do a little bit of a self-fraud audit and see if I was talking out of my arse or not. It's been known to happen. So thanks for watching. Let me know what your power rankings are, and I'll see you in the next one.